Summertime bass fishing, there are a lot of different ways to catch bass, but I think that there are 3 specific ways that catch some of the biggest bass that live in our ponds, in our lakes, and in our rivers.
Oh, we got it right there. That is a better one.
I think that's the same one. It's about the same size. And I think that is fishing around bluegill beds, fishing offshore structure, as well as fishing heavy cover. So in this video, we're gonna break down those 3 ways of catching big summertime bass. So stay tuned, it's gonna be a good one. Now, one of the most fun and easiest ways to catch a lot of summertime bass is by actually focusing on bluegill beds across the country in all of our lakes, all of our rivers, and all of our ponds. You're going to have a lot of bluegill that spawn throughout the summertime. Now, typically, they're going to spawn around the full moon. So I always pay really close attention every single month when that full moon happens, because you will see a lot of bluegills that come up really shallow and you can actually see these beds. Now, these beds look a lot like a honeycomb. They are very easy to spot with your own eyes without using electronics, but it should be known that bluegill will spawn in a lot of different depths. I have found bluegill beds in 10 and 12 foot of water when you have a little bit clearer water. But for the most part, this is something that you can see just going down the bank, whether you are fishing from the bank or fishing from a boat. Now, this is really a time that the bass can get revenge on the bluegill, because the bass typically are going to spawn before the bluegill, and the bluegill have been wreaking havoc on the bass, trying to eat all the eggs, trying to eat all the fry, and now it is the bass's turn. They are going to be seeking out these bluegill beds, and I have found that over the years, some of the biggest bass that you will catch in shallow water all revolve around these bluegill beds. Now, when it comes to locating bluegill beds, honestly, I have found beds everywhere at times. I have found these bluegill beds in the very back of little pockets in coves. I've also found bluegill beds on the main lake, completely surrounded by grass. For example, I fished a local reservoir here where I found a lot of bluegill beds on the first secondary point, kind of on that inside edge of that secondary point in a lot of creek arms. I also fished a lake that was really close to here that had these grass flats that dropped off into deep water. And right on these flats that led up to these drop-offs were where these bluegill beds were that you could actually see with your electronics. But the nice thing about bluegill beds is that they are very easy to spot. Sometimes you will see this in a 10 by 10 foot section. Sometimes you will find really massive beds that are 30, 40, 50, 60, 100 foot long. And what I have found is that most of the time, bass are going to be just on the outside edge of these bluegill beds. They kind of lurk in the shadows and zoom up there, grab a bluegill, and then come off. So when I'm actually fishing these beds, I'm not necessarily casting my bait right up on top of the bed itself. I am casting a lot of times to the outside edges of these massive bluegill beds. And one thing that I really like to do is look for the pieces of cover that are really close to bluegill beds. Sometimes there'll be a grass clump. Sometimes there'll be a stump, a lay down log. Sometimes there'll be a dock really close to these bluegills. And a lot of times those bass are going to just sit in that piece of cover, and when they decide that it's time for a meal, they're gonna zoom out there and grab a bluegill and come back. Now, when it comes to actually fishing, what lures that work best around bluegill beds, I do think it is important to mimic a bluegill. Although bass are an opportunistic feeder, meaning that they will eat just about anything, it seems like when bass are really fixated on a certain size bait or a certain kind of bait, if you can kind of somewhat match the hatch, it is going to help you. I remember a number of years ago, I saw a bluegill bed and I didn't know if the bass were actually around this bed. I threw a glide bait because that glide bait was what I had in hand at the time, but the glide bait looked a lot like a shad, and I didn't have any fish come out there and even sniff that glide bait at all. But as I was working my way out of the pocket, I actually picked up a popper style bait that looked just like a bluegill. And I cast it over there, and lo and behold, I had like 4 bass in a matter of minutes on that popper. And I gotta imagine that those fish were in that area all along, but because I had thrown that glide bait at first, it just didn't look like what they were wanting to eat. And as soon as I fished that little pop-ar style bait, it was instant the amount of bites that I got. Now, a topwater like a popper is a great bait to use. I also like to use frog style baits when I can. Another really good bait is a swim bait, but one that looks like a bluegill of some sort, whether that is a hard style swim bait like a glide bait or a soft one kind of like this one that I'm holding right here. Also, you can get really simple with this. You can fish things like a swim jig. You can fish things like a wacky rig, or even like this G-Crack bellows gill. This is a really good bluegill imitating bait. It's one that I can drag on the outside edges of these bluegill beds and catch some bass. Now, the true secret when it comes to fishing bluegill beds isn't necessarily about finding a magical bed. It's not about finding that one bluegill bed that is constantly reloading with bass. You actually do not see that a lot. What I have found to be the true secret when it comes to fishing bluegill beds is simply finding as many of them as you can. If you are maybe tournament fishing and you kind of start catching fish around bluegill beds, if you can go out there and locate 50 or 60 different beds and just rotate through those throughout the day, literally spending 10 or 15 minutes on each bluegill bed, that is what allows you to catch a lot of fish in this way, and also catch a lot of big fish, because it seems like a lot of these bass are just kind of cruising the shallows, and they are going at times from one bluegill bed to the next. So although one may not be that great one day, the very next day there could be just that little wolf pack of bass that show up, start eating a lot of those bluegill. Now, although I absolutely love to catch big bass around bluegill beds, something that I truly love is locating big schools of bass, using my electronics to locate big schools of offshore bass. So in this next section of the video, we're actually gonna go out to a body of water. I'm gonna show you exactly what to look for on your electronics and then eventually find a school of bass. This video is brought to you by Omnia Fishing. Not only is Omnia the place that I choose to get all of my tackle, rods, reels, line, lures, but it is just a complete resource for us as anglers. I know that every time I go to a new body of water, I love to look at local fishing reports, and I always choose to go to Omnia and look at those reports because you can see some general techniques that anglers are using and some lures that have been working on certain bodies of water. And not only that, if you choose to get the subscription over at Omnia, you'll get 10% cash back on all of your purchases, as well as free shipping on any order with no minimums. So if you guys would like to help support this channel, check out Omnia for all of your tackle and check out the Omnia Pro app. Now, in this video, we are going to talk a little bit about using your electronics, but you should know that you don't need the fanciest, the nicest, the most expensive electronics to go out there and catch bass deep. Now, if you have a lot of different units on your boat, is it going to make your life a little bit easier? Absolutely. But back in the day when I was actually 16 years old, I saved up money for like 2 months and I bought a Humminbird 797. This unit had a 3-inch screen on it. I was reading 200, 300 feet on this little 3-inch screen, and I only had one unit on my boat. I kept it at the dash. I would turn it around when I got to the front of the boat and cast on the opposite direction. So you can make things do with minimal or very inexpensive electronics. Now, the minimum thing that you are going to need is some sort of sonar, like a 2D sonar on your boat. Most boats that you have some sort of unit that at least reads 2D sonar. I guess technically you could do this with a flasher if you're really old school. Now, the other thing that you probably want to have is some sort of GPS. Now, if you don't have a unit that has GPS on it, I'm going to show you how you can use your phone to do the exact same thing. Now, the first step to finding deep bass is understanding bass behavior. And not only that, but really planning before you get to the body of water. I think a lot of guys overcomplicate finding bass offshore. And I think it's because they don't have proper planning. They're not thinking about where they're going to be fishing the night before they go out there on the body of water, or even 10 minutes before they go out. They just get out to the body of water, they do it for a little, they don't catch anything, and then they decide to either go to the bank or just go to those same areas where they've always caught fish. So in my mind, planning is a huge part in understanding how to catch bass offshore. Now, when bass get off the bank, there are certain structure elements that bass tend to relate to. Now, the one thing that's in common with all these structure elements is they tend to drop into deeper water. The bass may only be sitting in 10 feet, but a lot of times you're going to have deeper water close by. Now, there's different structure elements like ledges, points, humps, ridges. Not only that, but you may just have cover like brush piles or stumps or grass that is also off the bank and in deeper water. So before you get into the water, I really highly suggest marking about 10 or 12 different areas on a map that you want to explore when you actually put your boat in the water. Now, I'm going to tell you the simplest, easiest way to kind of find those higher percentage areas, and it actually all involves the spawn. We've seen from a lot of different studies, the vast majority of bass don't move a whole lot. Some will move hundreds of miles over the course of a year, but a lot of them are going to be fairly close. A lot of anglers know where bass are during the spring. A lot of times these fish are relating to creek arms, pockets, and coves. And so my theory, and what I have found to be successful pretty much anywhere across the country, is I always look for structure elements that are near major spawning pockets. Even if it's in the dead of summer when the bass have not been spawning for a long time, this still holds true. So when I'm looking at a topographical map of a lake, I am first going to think, where did these bass spawn? And then from there, I'm going to say, where are these bass going to move to after they spawn? And typically this is just outside of these spawning areas. And again, I am going to look for those structure elements near deeper water close to spawning grounds. Again, so these are going to be points. A lot of times the points coming out of major creeks can be great areas to catch fish. A lot of times in these lakes, you're going to have a creek channel that runs from the back of a creek all the way out to the main river channel. Where that creek channel hits the main river channel, that is a great intersection, a great place to find bass. Now, if you fish a lot more natural lakes, these lakes tend to be a little bit more bowl-shaped, a little bit less contours in them. This exact same thing still applies. A lot of times you may see a very small rise or a very small depression or a very small point somewhere near those main spawning grounds, and that's going to be one of the first places that I look for. Now, the other thing about natural lakes is sometimes you're simply dealing with finding the right cover. In natural lakes, you tend to have a lot of grass. So those outside grass lines that are close to those main spawning areas, that's going to be the first place that I look when I get to a body of water. Now, if you have a unit like a Humminbird Solix like I have, you can simply pull up the map and you can look around on the map. Now, if you don't have a GPS unit on your boat, I highly suggest that you download the Humminbird One Boat Network app. Now, with this app, you can actually buy a very highly detailed contour map of the lake that you fish. Maybe you always go to the same lake, but you want to start fishing this lake out deeper. I would highly suggest simply buying that lake, and now you have not only a map of the lake, but you have a lot of different features that can help you when you get out there on the water. One of the best features of this app is you have some of the same features that you have in a $2,000, $3,000 Humminbird Solix unit. And one of my absolute favorite things that you have is the depth shading. This is something that can help you pretty much more than anything out there on the water, is learning how to use depth shading. The reason that I say depth shading is so important is that a lot of times when you start to catch fish in a certain depth zone out there in deeper water, you can actually use that app, you can highlight that exact depth zone, and then you can see all the different contours and structures that have this exact depth zone, and it allows you to eliminate a ton of water extremely quick. Now, the next step to find find bass in deeper water is when you go out and you're going to start using your electronics, whether it's just a 2D or maybe you have side imaging, to go out there and find cover, structure, in bass. Now, in my opinion, this is where most people fail when it comes to finding bass in deeper offshore structure. And the reason that they fail is because they simply don't give it enough time. They don't sit behind their screens looking at their electronics for enough time to really catch bass. If you think about it, how many times do we as anglers fish the bank? We fish like what you see here behind me. You go for a couple of hours without catching a fish, and then you hit that one little pocket, that one little stretch, that one little point where you catch 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bass really quick, and then you go another couple of hours without catching fish. It's a lot easier to go down the bank and go hours without catching fish because you always feel like you're about to get bit. The same kind of concept you have to believe will happen with your electronics and looking at the screen. Sometimes you have to idle over a number of areas, and this might take hours and hours, but then you're gonna find that one little spot. It might be a little hard bottom area, a shell bed, a little rock pile, a stump, whatever it may be that holds a ton of fish. You could literally win tournaments, catch giant bass off one little area. And you really have to think of it the same as if you were going down the bank, fishing for hours on end without catching a fish. Now, when I'm looking at my electronics, there are 3 main things that I'm looking for. I am looking for structure or cover. I am looking for the bass themselves, or I am looking for bait. And sometimes you just need one of these things in order to go out there and catch fish. Now, if you have all 3 of those things, this is when you're almost guaranteed to go out there and catch fish. But sometimes you only need one. A lot of times what I think really helps me to go out there and find fish a little bit quicker is I actually am going to spend a certain amount of time. Usually it's a 2-hour or 3-hour block of time, and all I'm going to do for that time is just sit there and graph. And I may even see some of those juicy looking things to me, but I a lot of times will come back later and actually fish them. When you get to a new lake, sometimes it just takes a minute to really get a feel of the bottom, what's going on, and sometimes you start fishing too soon out there because you think that that grass clump looks good, but then you realize there's grass all over the lake. So you might have to find a perfect little point, or you might have to find a stump that's on the outside of that grass. But by graphing for a long time, you start to just see more and more. And the big thing that you also start to see is life. To me, this is one of the most important parts about fishing and finding fish deep, is finding those areas that have a lot of life. And when you are graphing, the more that you graph, you will see areas that are basically look like dead zones. There's not a lot of life. You're not seeing bait balls. You're not seeing anything there. And then you'll find these other areas that have a lot of life. You see bait, you see bluegill, you see all kinds of life in those areas. That is what I love to find. Those are the areas where you can typically catch a lot of bass. Now, once I find a few of these areas, if you have a GPS unit like the one that I have, I'm always just going to hit a waypoint and I'll be able to circle back around later and actually fish that particular area. Now, if you don't have a GPS unit, you can use that same Humminbird app that we talked about earlier and create a waypoint. You can also use a simple marker buoy. This is something you can get for like $4.99 at pretty much any outdoors place that you can use to mark an area so that you can come back and efficiently fish it. My point is that you can make things work without having to spend thousands of dollars with electronics. If you want things to be a lot easier, then I do suggest getting some Humminbird units, getting a 360, getting a live, but you do not absolutely need that. Now, say you have marked 4, 5, 6 different areas that have a lot of life in them. Maybe you actually saw some bass in them as well. The next part is the fun part, the fishing part. And this is something that I keep extremely simple. I have a rotation of 4 different baits that I use pretty much anywhere I go in the country that helps me to catch bass in deeper water. And the first thing that I am going to throw is what I call something fast. I want to throw a lure that moves fast through the water. This may be a deep diving crankbait. This might be a swim bait, something that I'm constantly moving through the water column. Up in the northern part of the country, I will use a jerk bait. A lot of times a jerk bait is a great tool, especially if you have smallmouth around, to locate these fish. Now, the reason that I like to use something fast is because if you start catching fish on that fast moving lure, you're able to cover so much more water, so much more effectively than anyone else. And a lot of times, simply being more efficient out there on the water is going to help you to catch a lot more and a lot bigger fish. The other thing that fishing something vast can really help you with is locate that object that you are looking for. Before I had forward-facing sonar, I would almost always throw a deep diving crankbait at the object that I was looking for out there in the water, because a lot of times, maybe it was a stump, maybe it was a rock pile, you could simply feel it down there with your deep diving crankbait, which allowed me to get a really good cast the next time around. But now with my Mega Live units, I simply am able to point my Mega Live at the object that I'm trying to cast to and make a very efficient, perfect cast at that object. Now, if I have a pretty isolated piece of structure or cover that I am targeting, a lot of times I might make 4, 5, 6 casts with that fast moving lure, and if I don't get bit, I'm going to go on to the next lure, which is simply something slow. Now, when I say something slow, this is typically just something that I am dragging across the bottom. For example, a big worm is one of my favorites. Another one is a football jig. Another phenomenal, a little bit slower moving bait is a Carolina rig. A Carolina rig is probably one of the most old school baits that a lot of guys don't use anymore, that catches so many fish in deep water. Now, if I make 4 or 5 casts with something slow and I don't catch anything, the third lure I'm gonna pick up is something finesse. This is something that a lot of times is small. For me, my #1 finesse bait that I pick up is a drop shot. A drop shot catches fish no matter where you go across the country in any type of cover that you want, and that's the #1 thing that I pick up when it comes to a finesse bait. Now, if I don't catch anything on those 3 lures, a lot of times that simply means that bass aren't there. They're not relating to that piece of cover or that structure that you are throwing out. The very last lure that I always throw, and this is something that I've kind of done a lot more in the last couple of years more than anything, is a really big bait. So we've gone fast, slow, finesse. The last thing I'm gonna throw is a big bait. A lot of times this is a glide bait, like a Spro KGB swim bait. Now, the reason that I throw a glide bait last is actually twofold. One, if you throw those first 3 lures and you don't get bit, but then you throw a glide bait out there and you actually have fish that are following your bait in, that may just mean that you found a good area, but the timing is off. Fishing deep, fishing offshore is all about timing. You could pull out to the same area 2 or 3 times throughout the day, but the 4th time you hit it is when they bite. So a lot of times fishing that glide bait simply tells me there are fish here. Now I need to come back later and actually see if I can't get them on one of those first 3 lures. The other thing about fishing that glide bait is simply not a lot of guys are fishing it offshore or fishing it deeper. And so if you fish something that is a little bit different than other guys, sometimes it can trigger bites that other guys are not going to get, and you can actually start catching them on that bigger glide bait. So if I fish those 4 lures in about 15 or 20 minutes and I don't catch a fish, I move on to the next area. And I will literally just repeat this process until I stumble upon the fish. Now, once I start catching fish, this is where going back to your mapping can help you to break down a lake so quick, because a lot of times what I'm gonna look for is a certain depth range that fish was saying. Maybe I've been fishing 10 feet deep, 15 feet, 20 foot deep, 30 foot deep, but all of a sudden I start to catch fish in 16 to 18 feet. So I'm gonna go back to my depth shading on my unit or in the app, and I'm going to select 16 to 18 feet as my depth shading. And now all of a sudden I can see some of the best areas on the lake within that very small band that is going around the lake. Now, instead of wasting time fishing 10 foot of water and 30 foot of water, I'm going to concentrate on that 16 to 18 feet, and I'm going to use my big motor and try to find as much structure elements and cover in that depth zone. That is when you can really unlock a lake and start to find a lot of areas where there's a lot of bass.
There we go, baby. Gosh, popped that so hard. Dude, he hit it so hard. Damn it. Look at him, see him up there? See if I can't get another one. There he is. That's a big one. Oh gosh. That is a good one there. Come here, buddy. Oh, he stayed in. He stayed in. Just in time. Oh, man. I knew I was about to lose that fish. Swung him in the nick of time. Oh man, that is awesome. Gosh, that was awesome. Gosh, that was awesome.
Now, although finding and locating offshore schools of bass is probably one of my favorite ways to fish, this is something that has just become extremely popular over the years. It just seems like every single year, more and more people are really good with their electronics and learning how to find fish offshore. And the truth is that there's always a shallow resident population of bass throughout the hottest parts of the summer. And one of the biggest things that I like to do to catch this group of fish is try to locate heavy cover. Try to locate the heaviest cover on your body of water, because a lot of times that heavy cover is going to provide a lot of shade, and it's actually going to provide the bass with a little bit cooler water, which they really like in the summer. So this next portion of the video, I'm actually going to take you out to a lake and show you how I dissect a lake and look for heavy cover in the summertime to try and catch a big bag of fish. Today, I am fishing a lake up in northern Ohio, and although I have fished this lake in the past, I have always primarily focused on offshore structure and cover, and I've actually never fished this lake in August. So with using no electronics, we will be primarily fishing shallow water today and fishing all new water. Now, one of the first things that I wanted to do when getting to this lake is do a simple run through. I wanted to try to circle around the lake and see what it had to offer. Now, before I could complete my ride through, I noticed a couple of sets of lily pads that were close to the bank. With it being early morning, I decided let's go ahead and just fish some of these lily pad fields to see if we couldn't take advantage of an early morning bite.
One thing I noticed right off the bat is that the main lake was actually not as clear as it is once you get up a little bit shallower, which I've seen that in several lakes before, but I don't know if this stuff up here is going to be too shallow or not. Like you can see, I can clearly see the bottom. I think that if, you know, up here in these pads, if there's some sort of matted vegetation, like these northern largemouth are fine being in pretty shallow water, but I just don't really know. You know, I've never fished this lake like this, and I've really never fished this lake a lot anyway, so we're gonna get to it. We actually had a pretty cool night last night, actually a very cool night as far as Ohio standards in the summer. It got down to 54 degrees, and it's still pretty cool this morning, but we're gonna target some of these pads because it was the first thing that I really noticed, and hey, why not a frog? So I might do a little bit of flipping if I can find some good flipping water. I just don't really know what to expect at all. The name of the game today is really going to be just covering a ton of water. I am seeing some bluegill up here, which is obviously good. That's probably going to be the primary forage for bass that are shallow, but we're just going to cover a lot of water. I got a feeling that when we find some, they may be grouped up. You know, a lot of lakes that have a lot of vegetation, that's how it works. You'll fish for miles without catching any, and then you'll find one little area that has a lot. So this little pad field was the first thing I noticed. I'm hearing some bluegill popping, but man, it is some shallow water up in there. So I don't know if it's too shallow without enough. Oh gosh, was that a bite? Oh gosh, I just got hammered. Okay. Wow. Dude, I just got like a good blow up. Sitting here talking. That's like the third cast. I've got a few different setups today. A frog. I got a couple of different flipping setups, glide baits. I got a light flipping setup, which is a 1/2 ounce weight with 20-pound fluorocarbon. And then I got like a punching setup. I know there's a lot of potential. I mean, there's a lot of coontail and milfoil on this lake, so the potential for some mats is definitely there. But man, that was I already had a blow up. Maybe I need to slow down a minute. I'm like, I'm excited, but I'm also like shocked that that happened so quick. It literally just came to the first set of pads that I saw. You guys may notice that I'm working this frog pretty fast right now. And I tend to do that when I'm trying to just cover a lot of water. If I get into an area where I start getting bit and start catching fish, I'll slow down a little bit. But sometimes I think that not only can you cover water quicker by moving this frog fast, but I think what it does is it causes a reaction strike. That fish is sitting underneath of a pad or underneath of a mat, and this bait just goes whizzing by him real quick. And so you can actually cause reaction strikes because of how fast you are working the bait while also being efficient at covering a lot of water. So, but the only problem with that is that, you know, for example, like I'm fishing pads right now, and sometimes the faster that you work it, the less likely it is that that fish actually eats the bait because of the pads. You know, it's got to bust up through a pad or on the side of a pad, and if you're working it really fast, you can miss it. But the name of the game right now is not catching everything as much as I'm just trying to locate them. I'm just trying to get a bite or two, and then I'll slow down. And if I have one come up there and bust it and miss it, I'll slow it down and see if I can't get them. Just taking it a couple steps at a time, I guess. I'll flip a little too. There's a fish. Ugh. Come on. Oh, that's a good one. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Holy cow. It just fell out. Look at that. All right, guys. We are about, we're about 20 minutes into the no electronics day. I saw some pads while I was driving, and I'm like, shoot, might as well, you know? And I got up here, and let's weigh this fish quick. A 427. Let's go, baby. Oh my gosh. 427, first one of the day. Look at that big old sucker. Man, look how big and thick and beautiful that fish is. Gosh, I love it so much. I'm gonna go ahead and let that guy go real quick. Thanks, bud. I was literally just running down the lake, looked over and saw a bunch of pads, and I'm like, I don't know, you know, like I enjoy fishing pads. So I came up here, within like 5 or 6 casts, I had a blow up, and didn't get anything else. Started flipping over here because these pads over here are like very, in comparison to the pads that are just right there, these pads over here are very big and thick. And the first fish was a 427. That's really gonna help us to our 15-pound mark. I definitely don't wanna have to be jumping in this water, but man, I can't believe that. That's awesome. It actually just got me really excited for what could lie ahead. So if there's fish in pads, I think that as the day goes, it's only gonna get better, but we'll just find out. Man, that is awesome though. I'm gonna let's just keep going, baby. Let's keep going. We got just a 1/2 ounce arc tungsten weight here with a Trocar TK130 hook and a Berkeley Pit Boss. This is one of my absolute favorite colors, which is I think it's called Bama Bug. And man, that was quite the fish to start on, not gonna lie. That fish hit pretty much as soon as it came through the pads. Man, I was glad I got 20-pound fluorocarbon and a 7-foot 6-inch. This is kind of like my all-purpose flipping and pitching rod that I got here. I didn't know if I was gonna need to go to braid, and I still may need to, especially if these fish make their way back. You know, I was pretty close to that fish, but if they make their way back into the pads later in the day, I may need to, I've got a setup here with braid on it. But I definitely believe you get more bites with fluorocarbon because of how silent it is going through those pads. But it doesn't matter how many bites you get if you can't get them out. Gosh, what a freaking fish. Right now I'm actually kind of having to pitch into the holes and the little gaps in between the pads because of how close they are. I might have to pick up that 1 ounce weight simply to get through the, like, look how thick it is right through here. I have some targets, some areas I can hit, but like that's so thick right in there, you can't, you'd have to bust through the pad to get the bite. Oh, well, that's another bite. Oh, did I lose him? Oh no. Yep. Dadgummit.
Now, fortunately, after fishing this first area and getting a few bites, including that 4.27 pound bass, I decided let's go ahead and fish some more lily pads. So I continued to run up the lake and look for lily pad fields.
The biggest difference between these pads that I just fished that I had no bite and the pads that I got 3 bites out of was the pads that I got 3 bites out of were substantially in cleaner water. I don't know if I just noticed that or if, you know, if it's legit. So, but I am going to keep that in my mind the next time we do get bit, assuming we get bit, that have to see if the pads that we get bit in are in clean water or dirty water. Because if that's something that can help us eliminate water quickly, that would be great. Oh gosh. Well, sorry, Bubba. Fish was on there for a while. I don't even think he's a keeper. Dadgummit, look at that little humpback dude. All right, well, we just got fish number 2, a humpback 12 1/8 incher. So just barely a keeper. But you know, we've been fishing now for about an hour and a half. That first little section that I hit, I had that 1 bite, I lost one in the pads, and I caught that 427. And from, you know, I'm trying to find another little section like that. That way that fish weighs 0.85 pounds. But you know what? He's a keeper. So 0.85 pounds. Something interesting about that fish, and I'm gonna let him go, is that I noticed that I just got back into a little bit cleaner water. And I don't know if that's a deal. It might be a deal, but the first section where I had those 3 good bites, it was clean water. And then I fished a couple of sections of pads where the water, it wasn't that it was muddy, but it was just off color. And now I've gotten back into another clean water section, and here we are getting a bite. So I don't know if it's a deal. Maybe it is. I'm just gonna kind of pay attention to it. And if it continues on, then that could really help me eliminate pads quick, because I can be able to pull up to them, see if, you know, they're in the right color water. If they are, fish them. If not, leave. And that can really help me to just be more efficient out here. But you know what? I'm really happy to just get another bite. Got another keeper. You know, usually I'd be happy with 2 fish that weighed 5 and 0.13 on the scale right now, but I know one of those is a 4 1/4. So that other one, we're definitely gonna have to get out of there. But hey, it's another keeper towards our 15-pound goal. At this point, I actually it may not be bad to jump in the water, because I'm already hot. It's not like that warm out, but it's so still and the sun is just blasting me. So we need to get to fishing. Let's keep doing it. One thing about this little patch of pads I'm fishing right now is it is in very shallow water. There's enough overhead cover with the pads, but I mean, that fish probably came out of about a foot. So the other fish I thought maybe had more like 2 foot of water under the pads. So just trying to process what I'm seeing and try to figure out what these fish are doing, you know, and well, you know, what the fish without electronics are doing. I'm not gonna lie, I've really enjoyed just being out here and fishing and not staring at the screen. But it's a process. Everything about bass fishing, man, it's just a process. You're taking in clues, and you're trying to make guesses about what to do next. There's one. Oh, did I lose him again? Dadgummit. Might have to go to braid. Just lost another one. I want to keep a 1 ounce weight on one of these rods, just in case I know that there's, you know, I've been seeing coontail and milfoil, and so if I come across a really thick mat, I don't want to have to rig up for that. So what I might do is just rig up a whole new rod with braid. That might be my best way to actually get the fish out of this stuff. Today is probably going to be about the numbers. You know, if I get 10 bites all day but only land 3 or 4 of them, then that's not going to be good. Man, I don't know how many fish I might have to go through today to put 5 in the boat, but that fish was a pad shaker, and I waited too long to set the hook. I thought maybe if I waited a minute he'd have it good, but the problem is because I waited and the water's so shallow, he actually swam about 5 foot to the side. And so when I set the hook, I just kind of popped the slack pretty much, and the braid did its job. It ripped to the side and it ripped through the pads, but I just don't think I had enough to get a hook in them. Okay. Alrighty, well, we just got fish number 4 or 3. It's another small keeper. He's definitely a 12-incher though, so that's good. But I've had a few bites, but as you guys know, I've lost quite a few of them. So this is not easy right now. He is a 1.12. 1.12. So just a small keeper, but a keeper nonetheless. I'm gonna fish the rest of this little section of pad, and then I'm actually gonna go back to where I had those bites earlier, because I know at least, I mean, obviously I had the real big one, but I had another really good bite, and I didn't really fish that section maybe as slow as I could have. So I'm gonna go back through there, fish it slow, and then we're gonna keep on trying to do a little bit of pads. There's a bridge over here in the distance that I might try to pull a square bill out on and crank a little bit. Just to try to find something outside of pads, because obviously this isn't the only thing I could be doing. But right now I'm just trying to get some juices flow, and it's very I'm not getting a lot of bites. It's few and far between, and I wish that I mean, obviously I got the one big one, but it seems like every one that I lose is a big one. You know, that's how it always is though. So, but I need to stop talking about it. This bite, I feel like, should just continue to get better throughout the day. So more fish should pull into the pads with the sun getting up, and hopefully we can really find, I feel that if we do this a lot, we will find that little section that has a lot of fish in it. So that's what I'm really looking for right now, but we just got to find it.
Now, after fishing several different sets of pads and catching a few keepers as well as losing some fish, I decided that I wanted to run back to that first lily pad field where I'd had that big fish blow up on a frog and caught that big fish flipping. With the sun starting to get overhead, I just wanted to see if there was anything different about these lily pads that was producing a bigger bite than the other ones that I had been fishing. Now, of course, when I went to go back to that spot, there was another bass boat sitting right there. So I decided to go past that spot to another area where I knew there was lily pads from earlier in my run through.
Oh, there we go. Let's go. Okay. Thought he was a little bigger than that, but there we go. What I was just talking about. Haven't seen anybody in these pads, and came up here shoeless and caught us one. All right, we just got fish number 4. Not a giant, another keeper. But man, he really had that thing. I was just talking about how I just came over a pretty large shallow flat, I mean 1.5 feet deep, and I was really thinking I just need to turn around, but I stood up and actually saw about a 3-pounder. Let me weigh this fish quick. Okay, that fish weighs 147, gives us 773, so we're a little over halfway to our goal. We need a 7-pounder. Nice little fish though. But what I was saying is that, you know, we came over this really shallow flat, and everything, the fisherman in me said, hey, just turn around, get out of there, it's too shallow. But I found a lot of times that all of us anglers think alike, and so if everyone is coming up and saying it's too shallow, then that means sometimes you can find a place completely by yourself where you don't have to deal with other people or any other fishing pressure. And sometimes you find areas that just aren't good, they're too shallow. But anyways, high risk, high reward. Came up here, got a bite, and hey, it's number 4. We've been fishing for about 3 hours and we got 4 bites. My hookup to land ratio has definitely gone up using the 30-pound braid. Wish I'd kind of done that earlier, but hey, you know what? It's all a process, and we got another almost 5 hours to try to get up to 15 pounds. So we really need to get some bigger bites, kind of like that one earlier. Even those couple that we had earlier were the right quality. So we're just going to keep on keeping on. This is fun. I'm enjoying this. I hope that you guys are enjoying this as much as I am, because this is a ball. Gosh, that was a great big one. I'm telling you, a great big one just came up there. I'm talking biggin'. Dude, I had him, man. I think I set too hard again. I'm getting too excited. I'm telling you, that was a giant. Man, that makes me upset. To have that kind of, that fish hit that frog, and I'm telling you what, it was, you could just tell it was a giant. And I made 3 or 4 casts back in there with that frog, and he never came up. So I made a long pitch with that 1 ounce weight, popped it through there, and he finally made his way to it, and he just boom, and then just again slow pull. And I set too hard. The reason that I know that I set too hard is because when you blow a fish's mouth open on the hook set, you'll feel it for a split second, and then it just slackline. And I felt it do that with both of those last 2 fish. And that's when I spent 5 weeks down in Florida a number of years ago, and I did a lot of flipping and pitching mats, and it was just a hard lesson for me to really learn that hook set with a big weight. It's not the hook set you want to give them when they're in that cover. You got to kind of just lean into them, and it's hard for a guy like me. I mean, if you guys have watched this channel, you know that I love to set the hook hard, and it's hard for guys like me, and I struggled right there. All right, we're doing the right thing. We gotta land them. We gotta land them. Come up here, buddy. Let's go. All right, just got us one. Punching. We've man, we've had quite the fiasco, but I'm telling you what, there's a group of fish in these pads, and I'm telling you, there's so many guys that would have just came up here, myself included, for a long time and just turned around. It is so shallow for so long. It's a little bit better one there, 2.42. Oh, sorry, 2.38. And look at that chunky fish. Just over 10 pounds now. Beautiful fish. Man, I would have liked to have seen those other ones. But there's definitely fish here. I'm gonna really ease my time around and fish this hard. It's not that big. I mean, I'm halfway through it already. So, but there's a lot of fish up here, and I'm so disappointed that I lost some of that, especially that last one. I mean, both those last 2 felt really, really big, but it is what it is. This is still a lot of fun. One thing that's a little bit different about these pads versus some of the other pads that we fished today is this one has a lot more mixed in chopped up grass that's making little mats, which is just that much. I mean, if you look down there, you can see what I'm talking about. There's just some chopped up grass, got some coontail that I'm definitely seeing. That's actually where that last fish came. He was just right under the mat that's like right there. So little extra chopped up, little extra cover. I love fishing chopped up grass mats like that. Man, there's a lot of fish in this little area. Let's go, baby. God, I think these are some better ones around here. That's gonna help a lot. Getting to be fun. A little bit better one there. It seems like I'm just running into a little bit better quality in this area here. I just wish I would have seen a couple of them once. We're doing it though. We're making it happen. Just got to keep on keeping on. We can get it done right here maybe. That is a 282. Replaces that 0.85 and gives us over 12 pounds now. Look at that. Beautiful fish. Thanks, buddy. So we've been fishing for about what is that, 4 hours? Yeah, about 4 hours. I tell you what I've been flipping is this little X Zone 3.5 inch. It's a smaller adrenaline curl. And I was flipping that Berkeley Pit Boss, but I rigged this up on the heavyweight, the 1 ounce weight. And they seem to be liking this just fine. Let's go.
Now, after catching several fish and again losing several fish, I definitely noticed that the biggest difference with this lily pad field that held a school of fish was that you had a lot of mixed in milfoil and coontail grass inside. Some of the other lily pad fields that I had been fishing were just straight lily pads with a cleaner bottom, but this had a lot of other grass mixed in. Sometimes I had to use a 1 ounce weight to punch through the matted cover. So my goal was to find a similar looking area, but I really quickly wanted to check that first spot that I wasn't able to get on to see if I couldn't fish slowly through it and catch another big fish.
Well, we spent a good amount of time in that one little area, and this is actually the first area where I caught that 4 1/4. I wanted to come back here, and there was a boat sitting here, but I'm gonna go ahead and fish through this now and see what happens. Not sure if he'll help us or not. I believe our small fish is at 112, 121. Helps us out a little bit. Interesting, I was just about to go really fast, and what I'm really thinking is the deal. This is exactly where I caught that 4 pounder earlier today, like literally right there. And most of those pads over there, except for where I got the other bite earlier today, don't have a lot of grass in them. And then I get right over here and you can see there's milfoil in there. And so it really seems like the areas that are holding these fish, I think that they can be a little bit everywhere, but the areas that seem to be holding the fish are where you have some sort of coontail or milfoil or chopped grass mat kind of mixed in with the other with the big lily pads. So that seems to be kind of the deal, and that's what I'm really going to kind of concentrate on probably from here on out, because I mean it's like clockwork right now. Oh gosh. Yeah, that's a good one. Let's go, baby. Let's freaking go. There we go. Another good one. Back here where I caught that 4 1/4 earlier, and it seems to be that mixture, just like what I was just talking about. If you get around a mixture of the milfoil or coontail in the pads, that's where these fish are. And it's little small sections, like very small sections. That fish is gonna help us a lot. All right, our little is a 121. That is a 257. Golly. Nice, 13.5 pounds. Pound and a half away from our goal. Beautiful fish, beautiful fish. I'm gonna really slow down in this little tiny area. I mean, it's 50 yards wide, and just pick it apart. Gosh, that was awesome. Oh, that was awesome. We've got a 147. So if we can catch a 3 pounder, we're gonna hit our weight. So we've got 12:22. So we basically got 2.5, 3 hours. I started fishing right about 7:22. I'll probably end things though right about 3 o'clock. So So a little under 8 hours. But man, that was, I love this.
Now, after catching a few fish in this particular spot, I really felt like I just needed to look for the mixed in grass. So I decided to run way up the lake, past the bridge, because I knew that there was a lot of lily pads in this section. And if I could find some areas with that mixed in grass, maybe I could find another big school of fish. Now, after fishing in the northern section of this lake for about 15 or 20 minutes, I just realized that it was going to take a lot of time. It was going to take too much time to really break down this giant pad field.
You know what? I don't think I'm gonna do it. I've only got about 2 hours, and there is so much here. It's gonna take longer than 2 hours for me to dissect this. And I know I can, there's three or four little areas, little pads that I didn't hit in that south end of the lake yet, that if I could spend the same amount of time hitting those more isolated sections, and I just feel a lot more confident that I'm gonna catch some, or at least see exactly what I want to see, if that makes sense. So I think that's what we're gonna do.
The good thing is that I knew exactly what I was looking for, so I didn't really waste too much time fishing just around lily pads. If it was just lily pads, I would fish through it fairly quickly with a frog and flipping the outside edges. But the more I looked around, I really didn't see exactly what I was looking for. So I decided to try and run back to the spot where I'd caught so many fish earlier to try to fish through it one more time before the end of the day.
Well, we just got an upgrade. We got about a half hour left to fish, and I was just about to leave. This is that area where I had caught them pretty good this morning, or at least had a number of bites, and I already had one bite and missed it. That's definitely gonna upgrade us a little bit. It's probably not gonna be enough, which stinks. 227 calls out a 147. 1433. Oh my gosh. Okay, we still got a half hour left. Solid fish there. I was just about to leave, and I think I still am, because I fished through the main stretch without any bites. I think around the corner there's another pad field, so I'm gonna retie real quick, and then we're gonna head over there. Dang it. Come on, Ty. I got too excited. I actually saw the lily pad move, flipped over there. And he was there. And he just held on to it, man. Oh, that ain't gonna help us, but that's definitely a fish. That wasn't the same spot. I saw another lily pad move. Maybe we got a little school of them. Let's check real quick, see how big he is. That ain't gonna help us. It's not a 220 something. 174. That was crazy. That was not that. That was 20 feet away from where that other bite was. And I saw a pad move, turned back, saw another pad move, pitched in there. That's what yielded both those bites. But yeah, we got the right ingredients right here. We can make this happen. Got the grass. Got some, even got some depth. This actually has some of the best depth I've seen.
Oh my gosh, it hurts. Oh my gosh, it hurts. Are you kidding me? I'm so jacked. Dude, I'm talking 3:15 I needed to be done. 3:15. It's 3:09. You see that on my watch? 3:09. Are you kidding me? Not jumping in this lake, baby. I know it's no tournament, guys, but oh my god. $4.01. $4.01. That's 2 4-pounders. 16.07. That's pretty good.
Now, just a quick bonus for you guys. Maybe you have a body of water where there's not a lot of, vegetation. There's not a lot of lily pads. So in this video right here, it was actually summertime as well. And I went ahead and fished in shallow water without really using my electronics and was still able to catch a big bag of fish. So if you guys enjoyed this video, I think you'll like this one as well. Thanks for watching, guys. Comment down below any questions that you have, and I will see you in the next one.